What's up, everyone? Welcome to the April 16th edition of FanDuel Tournament Plays presented by PrizePicks. I'm your host, Adam Scherer. You can follow me on Twitter at ShipMyMoneyDFS. And as a reminder, you get one free month of Awesemo plus Platinum when you sign up and make a deposit at PrizePicks. Be sure to use the code Awesemo to receive a 100% first deposit bonus up to $100. We have a nice split slate today, 6 evening games, and we're going to take a look at those for FanDuel tournaments. Look at 3 of the top tournament stacks and 3 of the top tournament pitchers using the top stacks tool and the top pitchers tool on the Awesemo.com website. Starting with the stacks, number 3, the Houston Astros are projected for about 2% aggregate ownership with a 5% chance of being the top scoring stack. They are facing Chris Flexen, who has a Houston has a 4.1 implied run total. Flexen's not a bad pitcher, but we know that there's a lot of power in the Houston lineup. And they're just always a high upside offense to target when they're not popular, which is the case tonight. A modest 4.1 implied run total, not a great park to hit in. But you just have guys, Altuve offers some power and speed. Brantley's a good overall hitter. Bregman, Tucker, both have power. No Alvarez is a problem. So the bottom of this order is a little bit weaker than usual, but still a pretty solid offense going up against Flexen at low ownership. Number 2, St. Louis Cardinals, also projected for about 2% ownership with a 6% chance of being the top scoring stack. They're facing Adrian Hauser. They have a 4.3 implied run total. Kind of similar situation as Houston. Not a particularly likely team to succeed, but also a team that does have some good bats in their lineup. You know that Goldschmidt, O'Neill, Arenado, Dickerson all have power. Dylan Carlson has some power and speed at the top of the order. Paul DeJong's not, he's a relatively high upside shortstop option. So there is just a lot of power in this lineup. There's some speed as well. Hauser's not a bad pitcher by any stretch. And Milwaukee does have a solid bullpen behind them. Hauser last year, a 4.42 xFIP, only allowed 0.71 home runs per 9, but he did only strike out 17% of hitters as a starter. So you do get some added, upside from the Cardinals being able to put the ball in play. And number 1, the Chicago Cubs, 16% aggregate ownership, 17% chance of being the top scoring stack. They're facing Antonio Senzatella in Coors Field. Senzatella pitches to contact, typically does a pretty good job of getting ground balls, but only a 15% strikeout percentage last season, respectable 4.2 xFIP. In Coors Field, part of the reason that it's such a good park to hit in, it doesn't even have to do with home runs. It has to do with the outfield just being massive. So balls that would typically be caught fall in for singles turn into doubles, especially if you're faster players, can turn into triples. So there can just be a lot of big innings and a lot of fantasy points to stack together. That's even more appealing on FanDuel because runs and RBIs are weighted a little bit heavier than they are on DraftKings. So if you do get those innings that, maybe guys don't hit a ton of home runs, but you just score 5-6 runs based on, singles and doubles, that can really add up on FanDuel. So the Cubs still are projected to go a little bit under-owned here against Senzatella. Looking at the top 3 pitchers now, coming in at number 3, Hunter Green, projected for 4% ownership with a 9% chance of being the top scoring pitcher on tonight's slate. He is in a really, really dangerous matchup against the Los Angeles Dodgers. The Dodgers have a 5.2 implied run total, but the benefits for Green, for one, he's $6,500, so he's very inexpensive. He's going to allow you to get whatever bats you want throughout the rest of your lineup, but he also threw 92 pitches in his major league debut on the 10th. That's really good to see because we're still at a point in the season where pitchers are working on getting stretched out and teams are being cautious. And on FanDuel, you get added points for a quality start. So not that it's particularly likely that Green gives you 6+ innings and 3 or fewer runs against the Dodgers, but we at least know he's stretched out enough to do so. Whereas plenty of other, even more expensive pitchers on this slate, there's a legitimate question mark about, are they going to get the 6th inning if they've thrown 80 pitches through 5? That's not the case for Green. Number 2, Julio Urias, 5% projected ownership, 11% chance of being the top scoring pitcher. He has a lot of question marks around him, but he also has a lot of talent in a very good matchup. Urias only threw 57 pitches in his first start of the season. That was a game in Coors Field obviously against the Rockies. His velocity was down a bit. He really struggled. So I don't know what his actual pitch count is here. We do know that Dave Roberts tends to be pretty cautious with his pitchers. It wouldn't be surprising, even if Urias is pitching well, if he does get pulled after 5 innings. And that is, a bit of concern on FanDuel. That being said, he did have a 25.6% strikeout percentage last year, 3.8 xFIP, has a very good matchup against the Reds. He said after his first start that he feels fine, that he's not dealing with an injury. And there is some chance that, the Dodgers do let him go 6 innings. So there is a very high ceiling here, and he's only getting 5% ownership. And number 1, Jameson Taillon, 11% projected ownership, 11% chance of being in the optimal lineup. He is facing the Baltimore Orioles. The Orioles have a 3.8 implied run total. Taillon only threw 72 pitches in his first start, but it's likely you get 80 to 85 here based on that. He's $8,600. He's coming off of a season where he had a 4.61 xFIP, struck out 23.5% of hitters. He did have some issues with home runs, allowing 1.5 home runs per 9, but there's not a ton of power in the Orioles lineup. The top of the order can certainly do some damage with Mullins, Mountcastle, Santander, and Mancini. Austin Hayes has some power as well, but you do get some strikeouts in there, and the bottom of the order isn't quite as dangerous. So to recap, the top 3 tournament stacks on FanDuel: number 3, the Houston Astros; number 2, the St. Louis Cardinals; number 1, the Chicago Cubs. And top 3 tournament pitchers on FanDuel: number 3, Hunter Green; number 2, Julio Urias; and number 1, Jameson Taillon.